But we're talking about all things Arsenal today. It is a big discussion point because, seemingly the season has been derailed due to injuries. So just kind of catch us up first here. I think the big news is the loss of Kieran Tierney. Ben, what's the latest on that situation?
Or is it, Jason? Is the big news the loss of Kieran Tierney? Because before we go into this injury updates and stuff like that, as you know, if you don't follow the podcast, most of you will probably know that I'm not an Arsenal supporter. So I couldn't give two jots whether these players are back, whatever they do. I support Newcastle. But as two Arsenal supporters, I've got 2 points for you. First one, do you think that Arsenal will qualify for the Champions League given the latest developments in terms of these injuries that they've picked up? Raj?
To me, it comes down to what we'll talk about in a little bit, and that's Thomas Partey's injury severity. Because to me, that pivot especially allows Xhaka to play in the advanced 8 role, which the team has been playing very, very well.
Right, Raj, I want you to stop there because you're going to ruin my second question. I just want a yes or no. Just yes or no, Raj. Just yes or no.
So what was it? Okay, so what was the question?
Will Arsenal qualify for the Champions League?
Oh, my God. I'll say yes.
Yes. Jason?
My confidence has been knocked, but I'm going to say yes as well, evaluating Tottenham and the Spurs. So they do Spursy things and they usually kind of bottle these situations.
Right. Well, so point 2, Jason, you said the importance of Kieran Tierney to the team. And then Raj, pissing all over me chips. Can I get away with that on YouTube? Talking about Thomas Partey. The next question was going to be, which of those player absences between now and the end of the season do you think will be the biggest loss to Arsenal, and why? Raj?
Yeah, to me, it's Thomas Partey because he allows Xhaka to play in that advanced 8 role the team had become very comfortable in. And he's quite effective, or more effective than, let's say, Sambi Lokanda or Xhaka as a lone 6. And so that, to me, I mean, I think that the data with Xhaka and Partey when healthy is pretty superb in terms of points acquired versus games played, if I remember correctly. And
I will expand upon that, Raj. Expand upon that. Jason, give me your thoughts, Jason.
I think this is a really tough question. And I think my kind of gut feeling is that they're all huge losses in their own individual way. And so I don't really like to say one is more important than the other.
Because you get spokes on your arse, McKenna.
But if you're going to push me for one, I think that the Tierney loss is the biggest because of the lack of backup in that position, whereas the others do kind of have some sort of quality to fill in those positions. But I don't want to piss on your parade there, Ben. You know, you're leading this one this week.
No, all I'm going to say was I'm glad you said Kieran Tierney, because as an outsider looking in, I would have thought maybe the absence of Kieran Tierney would have been the costliest to Arsenal. Tavares, hasn't been great. We've seen him hooked. I think was it first half in the FA Cup and then at half time against Palace. But I've done a little bit of a deep dive in terms of points per games when those players have been in and out of the team. Without Tierney in his absence over the last couple of seasons, Arsenal is still averaging around about 1.9 points per game. However, the absence of Thomas Partey, Arsenal, they have 15 points just from the 14 games that he actually missed. Now, if we're looking at around about 1 point per game average with 9 remaining, that would put Arsenal in and around that 63-point mark. Now, over the last 5 seasons, on average, you're looking at finishing around 6th, more probably 7th in that league, which puts you outside those Champions League points. So I would suggest that based on the data and based on the history and what we've seen so far this term, I mean, last season when Thomas Partey was starting, Arsenal averaged around about 1.5 points per game. But this season, he's really stepped up his game. We have 47 points from his 23 starts. So, and there's only 6 losses out of those 23 games. So his influence and impact on that team, can it be understated? And like Roy said, I mean, the loss of Tierney, and does that pull Xhaka out? The Conga, not great. Do we see a shift maybe from that what we've inherently seen with that 4-2-3-1? Does Arteta trust Tavares enough to keep him in that back four, or will we see maybe a change in tactics and a slight change in formation?
I mean, one of the points that I wanted to bring up on this is kind of like it's a chain reaction to all of them, because without Tomiyasu there, Tierney has played in a more reserved position. And, without Partey there for however long that's going to be, the whole team makeup, I think you're kind of talking about that there with the tactics of the team. But over the last 6 game weeks, Arsenal have only had 5 big chances created. And I think that leads to the fact that Tierney hasn't been able to push forward with the absence of Tomiyasu, so it's all interlinked. And that's why I said the point about, I'm not sure if you can say individually that one is more important than the other, because they're all so vital to the way that this team plays. Isn't that right, Raj?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I still think even without Tomiyasu, I think what you're going to see Arteta go back to is that double pivot with Xhaka dropping into the left channel with Nuno pushing up high and wide like Tierney used to. Nuno, he's not comfortable defending right now. You can tell, like first in the last match, he's just not comfortable defending while the ball's in the air. And then along with Gabriel, who tends to have some kind of moments of madness here and there, they're not connected either. And so you combine both those guys, it opens you up to risk, right? Like that Jordan Ayew goal. And so I think you're going to have Nuno push up, you're going to have Xhaka drop. I think the biggest issue with Arsenal, actually, more so than anything else, is the fact that Lacazette's link-up play hasn't been there, because everyone is just shielding Odegaard because he's the engine, right, in progression. And every team is just saying, hey, if Lacazette beats us in link-up, so be it. And so I think you might see a change. First off, he needs a rest. He's playing a lot of 90s. And so I think you might see a change there, whether it's Martinelli, whether it's Nketiah. You're going to see some mix up there. And I think the game versus Brighton at home is a good match to get Nuno's confidence up and potentially introduce someone into the center forward position as well.
Does Mikel Arteta need to portion some of the blame here for the lack of investment or recruitment, certainly in January, and ultimately the loss of so many players? You're talking about a fairly threadbare squad that lacked any serious strength in depth. Are all of those, changes that have happened since the beginning of this season, is that coming home to roost now?
I mean, honestly, I don't think so, because they're playing 1 game a week. Honestly, I think the biggest mistake the club made was letting Tomiyasu play versus Liverpool. He tried to play through the calf injury, right, versus Liverpool, re-injured it, which is likely then what led to the other calf injury. That one decision has now had a massive knock-on effect because it's influencing so many other positions and how you play. That to me is the inflection point thus far. I mean, for a team that's only playing once without any European competition out of every cup, the depth, is actually okay, but you can't that knock-on effect. And then knowing Tierney's injury history as well, I just think it was a high-risk decision. I partly made because Suarez had a hip injury at the time as well. But man, shift over Ben White to right back and play holding, especially in a match that you're not likely to win versus Liverpool. So that's had a massive knock-on effect.
Yeah, and I agree with Raj totally there. And the point about the investment as well in January, I think Arsenal have kind of shifted very wisely to a model of like medium and long-term investment. They probably thought there wasn't any good signings to have in January. We know that the January transfer window is very inflated as well. And I would rather we end up maybe 5th, 6th, because we didn't make a silly signing, signing somebody up to a long-term contract or somebody who wasn't right or spending too much. If then next season and the season after we have a much stronger squad. And I think that is the way going forward. A lot of people question the Aubameyang decision, but I think that was the right one for all parties. He seemed to be upsetting the squad a little bit, but he was also a massive drain on club resources if he's not going to play. And now we've got a lot of money to play with in terms of wages for next season. You know, that's a huge amount of money that you could put in 3 or 4 kind of star players. So I don't think there's a question there at all, really, in terms of the investment at all. I guess the question that I want to ask maybe both of you is, who do you think has the better run-in out of Arsenal and Spurs then? Kind of going through it, you've mentioned it already, Raj. The next one is Brighton, then it's Southampton, Chelsea, United, West Ham, Leeds, Spurs, Newcastle and Everton, whereas Tottenham have Villa, Brighton, Brentford, Leicester, Liverpool, Arsenal, Burnley and Norwich. I mean, which one seems to be the one that would lead you to that 4th place spot?
I mean, I would say Arsenal, but the game in hand is away at Chelsea, which is not an easy game, obviously, as we know. And so I think I give the slight edge to Tottenham there, although away at Aston Villa is not easy. Even Brentford at home or away, I can't remember. And so I can't remember that. And then away at Liverpool is always difficult as well. So, you know, there's chances for drop points from both sides all throughout. And so, I mean, it honestly might come down to the North London derby might be and I don't even want to think about that because I'm having palpitations thinking about it, but that might be honestly what it comes down to in the end, because that could be a 6-point swing. So yeah, it's I think it's even enough, maybe 55-45 Tottenham to some of those games, but the biggest decider here, if it's close, obviously, is that NLD.
I mean, does it fill you with a bit of confidence that 538 still predict Arsenal just a little bit above finishing Tottenham, or do you not look into those metrics at all?
Honestly, I don't even look ahead in the schedule. I'm concerned about Brighton more than anything. That's how I focus on it. That's honestly how I do it. The biggest thing to me is, and I said this after the match, even after losing the match, is the Partey injury. We could have lost 10-0. If Partey's healthy, I'll take it. Right. And so it doesn't matter. That's the biggest knock on, is having him out. So that's honestly, I think, is going to have a huge effect. If we can come back for that middle run of games after Southampton, they should be able to handle Brighton and Southampton with Lokonga, in my opinion. And so, then we'll see. It just depends on what the severity of that injury is.
I guess let's address the Partey injury then, Ben. What is the latest information on that? Is it going to be a short-term kind of thing? Is there a big risk of re-injury? I mean, should we be concerned?
I want to sidestep that injury question again and say, by the way, I think Tottenham have the momentum. I think by the time the North London derby comes along, I think Arsenal could potentially be out of the race. Game week 36 is pivotal for Tottenham. They've got Arsenal and they've got Liverpool in that game. But like I say, when you've got those attacking players like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Kuvaletsky in form and scoring, by the way, then, you know, I look at that Arsenal team, I've got zero confidence in Alexander Lacazette. Never mind scoring, but completing 90 minutes. I think the pressure then falls to the likes of Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, Martinelli, young players still learning their craft, a lot of responsibility. I just think it's too much. But we move on. Thomas Partey. Raj will shed a little bit of light, but we have had an update from Chris Wheatley today. And that update suggests that Tommy Partey has suffered a similar thigh injury to the one that he suffered at the back end of 2020. Now, I had a back look through that data. That injury kept Thomas Partey out for around 5 weeks. Now, we need some clarification on the specifics behind this injury. But if this was a similar case, then Partey could potentially return for that North London derby on May the 12th. Again, assessments still continue, but you can shed a little bit of light on that, Raj, can't you?
Yeah, so I asked Chris to clarify that, and he said that it was because McKenna said after the match that it's in the same area, and so I wasn't sure if Chris had more information on it or not. He said he's been told same location, but they don't know severity yet. So, like you said, if it is that grade 2, again, yeah, you're looking at 4 to 5 weeks. If it's a grade 1, you're looking at potentially that 1 to 2 weeks, and so. we'll see. It just depends on, I thought initially the fact that he was being quote assessed ahead of the Brighton match was good news because they didn't rule him out immediately, which tells you manual assessment may have, left them with some gray area, and you follow that up with a scan, but we shall see, right? MRI is gold standard there.
And just quickly, Raj, can you explain the injury itself? Why is it going to take that time to recover from it?
Yeah, I mean, hip flexor, it's a quadriceps, but I believe it was the hip flexor, which is the rectus femoris. And so it crosses both the hip joint and the knee joint. So it's involved in any hip or knee action. So kicking, running, reaching for the ball, right? It takes a double demand. And so if I remember correctly, Partey got hurt when he was reaching for a ball to control that ball in the lead up to Zaha's, we could say tenuous penalty. And then, and so in the sequence there, you can see him reach for the ball and then he pulls up right away. So I immediately thought maybe it's something where he recognized the experience from last season and he immediately went off, unlike last season. So that can go either way. But in general, the hip flexor just takes a significant amount of load during football. And so that's why it can take a longer time to rehab.
And just for people listening, this is the best place to find out about that injury information. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. I guess the next question is Tomiyasu's return. And I think this one is a big talking point because pre-show we were having a little debate amongst ourselves about the information that has been discussed about this. But me and Ben were kind of had a feeling that it's been said for a while that he'll return. And the timelines have been very interesting, haven't they, Ben?
Yeah, certainly this one seems to be ongoing. We know, it's a calf problem. Initially, I think it was the right calf. And then in more recent times, that's now the left calf. And we heard ahead of that Crystal Palace game, Mikel Arteta did speak about Tomiyasu and the possibility of him maybe being in with a chance to return for the matchday squad. Now, that didn't correlate with an update from the Arsenal website earlier this week that actually stated that Tomiyasu isn't likely to join the first team in full training until after the Southampton game. So that's pushing that timeline again. And you just wonder, like I say, from my experience, what we're sometimes hearing from the medical department and what's published on the website and then what we hear from Mikel Arteta, the three don't always marry up. So I wouldn't, take that as gospel and set in stone. But yeah, it certainly looks as if we won't be seeing Tomiyasu anytime soon.
And so with that situation there, Raj, is there also a worry that when he does eventually return, that there's going to be a lot of match sharpness, fitness, and all these other things? So, he might be thrown in one of these really important games, or are they treating him with almost, as Ben likes to say, kid gloves?
I think they are, to your first point, and Arteta said that they don't want him to get re-injured again, which essentially would put him out for the entire season. And when you have an extended layoff for as long as he's had, there's always a risk, not just for re-injury as you build up fitness and getting back to your rhythm and your confidence, but to every other body part as well. And there's always risk when you come back to matches. The longer you've been out, the higher that risk goes. The more intensity of a game, the higher that risk goes as well. So this might be something, though, where the team thinks they can get by versus, some of these, lesser quality sides and then bring him back. Again, though, it comes back to risk reward, of course. And so we'll see. It might come down to the performances that they have versus Brighton and Southampton, right? Is seeing how Mikel adapts the formation and how the team responds to those, if he has confidence going into that Chelsea match as well. Honestly, calf injuries, they suck. There's no other word. They're really can be really, really sensitive, especially if it's an underlying soleus muscle. For example, the example that comes to mind is PSG's Sergio Ramos I think this season he missed 3 months with a soleus injury. And so, it's tough. It's very, very tough because the soleus is always on. It's always activated. It's a type 1 muscle. It's one of the few. So it's always under load. And so it's just very difficult oftentimes to come back from that. So I think you're seeing a change in approach based on that re-injury he had. And we'll see. I mean, it's been up and down with him. We've seen him in like partial team training. We've seen him doing individual sessions in the facility. But I think they are being conservative in hopes of having him back for the final stretch run.
Do you think as well that fans have also been a little bit impatient because, like I prefaced this saying that it seems like for a while he has been almost returning, but you have kind of described there that this is the right approach for the type of injury, the fact that he has been re-injured as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we don't realize, I think what it confuses fans is that this idea of there not being a timeline, but that's just how it goes with muscular injuries. It's really, honestly, when you say day to day, it's truly day to day. You ramp up, you see how the person feels. If it's within parameters, you keep going. If it's not, or if you're, you think there's a little gray area, especially with a player who just got re-injured, then you're going to be more conservative with them, right? So it's going to be that day-to-day basis. And then, of course, you have external pressures you have to think about as well. So I think it's just one of those things where I understand the frustration from the fans, especially he's an important player. But it is one of those things where, when someone asks me if they come in with a calf injury, how long it's going to take, I tell them, we'll see. It depends. You really don't know. So that's just what it is.
Final one has to be Kieran Tierney. And, we started the discussions about him. I believe he's such a big loss to the team. But in one sense, Ben, is the timing going to work out all right for Kieran Tierney? Is he going to return in time for a good preseason? Because I think with a lot of these situations, players kind of often have these re-injuries and recurrences of problems through seasons because they don't have that good build-in to build that level of fitness. Is that going to time in nicely for Kieran Tierney?
Hopefully, yeah, we would expect, a smooth road to recovery, and the target and the focus will be on, that return to train in and around that sort of June period, getting ready for that upcoming season. In terms of timing, that remains to be seen. If Arsenal carry on going forward and do manage to qualify for a Champions League place, then great. If not, and, the Kieran Tierney withdrawal from the squad is a main factor, influencing factor on why Arsenal don't, then the timing, sucks pretty much. This was a strange one. It didn't really see it coming. I had heard that he was part of the travelling squad with Palace. So for him to be withdrawn and then subsequently find out that, he was seeing a specialist for a second opinion and then surgery. Again, there was no real sort of indication of the severity of the problem. So, that decision's been made fairly quickly. And ultimately, I think it's a case of let's do this now because, further down the line, if it's not addressed, there are going to be problems.
And Raj, does this fill you with confidence as well, that the speed that this has been addressed, or do you still have a bit of worries, the fact that Tierney has had a few injuries through his career at Arsenal?
I mean, I think it has to be worrisome. He's picked up a lot of these. I mean, and this is, from my understanding, it's not a contact injury, or there's been no indication that it is. It sounds like it's an overload issue. He came back to training and had irritation, probably had some swelling in that knee. And we don't really know what it is. I thought immediately it was a meniscus, but that's just speculation. And so I think, yeah, it has to be. I mean, he's missed games now every, a good stretch of games every season. Although last year was, again, due to a big contact injury. He did come back early from it. But these injuries that are non-contact and that are from overload, they're always more concerning to you than, sometimes if someone falls through your leg, doesn't matter who you are. You could be the most injury resilient athlete ever, and enough force goes through your leg, you're going to have an injury. And so this is not that, obviously.
Is this a bad question to ask, but is it the fault of Scotland for playing him in redundant friendlies, or is it down to Arsenal maybe not saying to Scotland, don't play him in redundant friendlies?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say with international. That's why you see a lot of clubs do play games, right? Guys pop up with suddenly having injuries immediately prior to international games. But I know I think Tierney is one of those guys who really values that time on the international team, right? And my guess is his bill of health was clean, very, very clean before he left. So, I mean, it's always difficult in that regard. How do you say no to a player who really wants to play? And we know Mikel tends to have good relationships with these guys. So,
well, I guess that's the finishing points there, Ben. I don't know if you want to add anything else, but you pressed us at the start for our opinions, but I guess to be fair to you, who do you think is the biggest loss out of the three there? Just quickly, quick answer as you said to us.
I would have said Tierney off the mark, but looking at the data, I think that the absence of Partey could derail Arsenal's Champions League qualification hopes.
And the final question, yes or no, is Arsenal going to qualify?
No.
Well, that's a lovely point to end on this week's podcast. As always, I remind people, do hit that subscribe button, do send us comments below and leave a like, because we like to know that you're enjoying this content. We'll be back again very soon. We hope to be back in the trend with these as usual coming out on Thursday. But for now, we're going to wish you the best of luck, the best of health, and we will see you again very soon.